In 2003, during the invasion of Iraq, American forces built temporary bunkers and reinforced shelters around Baghdad. Most were made quickly using concrete slabs, sandbags, and steel supports. They were designed to shield soldiers from mortar attacks and nearby explosions, but under enough pressure, those same shelters could become deadly traps. One bunker was being used as a resting point for troops returning from patrols. Inside, several soldiers were trying to recover between missions while artillery fire echoed in the distance. The ceiling above them was held up by basic steel beams supporting heavy concrete sections. Then, without warning, nearby shelling shook the ground hard enough to destabilize the structure. The roof suddenly collapsed inward. Dust and debris exploded through the bunker as chunks of concrete crashed onto the men inside. Most of the soldiers managed to crawl out through the smoke and dust. Some were injured, others barely able to breathe. But one man remained trapped beneath a massive slab of concrete. The weight pinned his chest and legs to the ground, leaving him unable to move. The soldiers immediately began trying to free him. Some used their hands to pull away debris, while others searched for tools. Medics pushed through the dust and reached the trapped soldier, attempting to stop the bleeding and keep him conscious. Witnesses later recalled hearing him speak clearly at first, repeatedly asking them to hurry. As time passed, engineers arrived with heavier equipment, but every attempt to lift the slab created another danger. If the concrete shifted the wrong way, it could crush him instantly. Rescue crews were forced to move slowly while the trapped soldier drifted in and out of consciousness. The scene became increasingly desperate. Dust filled the bunker, radios crackled constantly, and exhausted soldiers continued digging for hours. According to the men who were there, the hardest part was hearing his voice become weaker over time. Everyone knew he was still alive, but nobody could reach him fast enough. Eventually, the soldier stopped responding. By the time rescuers finally lifted enough debris to pull him free, he had already died beneath the collapsed roof. Later reports concluded that severe internal injuries and blood loss were the main causes of death. The incident became another reminder of how dangerous improvised wartime shelters could be. Structures built to protect soldiers sometimes failed under the pressure of nearby explosions, turning cover into confinement within seconds. The Fal Pocket. In August 1944, the countryside of Normandy became the site of one of the final disasters for German forces in Western Europe. After weeks of Allied advances following the D-Day landings, the German 7th Army and 5th Panzer Army were pushed into a shrinking area near Falaise. Soldiers called it a pocket because the escape routes were rapidly closing from every direction. At first, many German units believed they could still retreat east and regroup. Long columns of tanks, trucks, artillery, and wounded soldiers crowded the narrow roads cutting through the fields of Normandy. But by the evening of August 21st, Allied forces had sealed the gap. Around 50,000 German troops were trapped inside. Soon after, Allied aircraft began attacking the congested roads from above. Bombers dropped phosphorus munitions onto vehicles packed tightly together. Witnesses later described entire convoys disappearing beneath smoke and fire within minutes. Burning fuel spread across the roads, while damaged tanks blocked escape paths behind them. Some armored crews survived the first explosions and locked themselves inside their tanks for protection. But once the phosphorus entered the vehicles, the heat became impossible to escape. The chemical continued burning on contact, spreading across uniforms, skin, and metal interiors. Ammunition inside the tanks began detonating from the heat, turning the vehicles into sealed furnaces. Days later, recovery units moved through the destroyed pocket to examine the battlefield. The roads were littered with burned-out trucks, dead horses, shattered artillery pieces, and abandoned weapons. Investigators found tank crews still inside their vehicles, many burned beyond recognition. Some remains had fused to metal seats after the intense heat melted parts of the interior. Military reports later confirmed the scale of the destruction. Tens of thousands of German soldiers had either been killed or captured during the encirclement. Hundreds of armored vehicles were left destroyed across the countryside. What began as a planned withdrawal had collapsed into total chaos. Soldiers who entered the area after the fighting ended recalled the overwhelming smell that remained for weeks. Smoke still drifted above the wreckage, and many fields remained covered with twisted metal and abandoned equipment. The Fal Pocket became one of the final turning points of the Normandy campaign. It marked the destruction of much of Germany's remaining strength in the region and showed how quickly retreating armies could become trapped once supply lines and escape routes disappeared.